So I wanted to talk about asymmetries in the body. I think there's this notion in the fitness, strength and conditioning, performance industry, and I don't think it's a specific fault of anything or anybody, but there's this notion that if I find asymmetries in my body, or if I'm training someone and I find asymmetries, that is inherently a bad thing. And I want to tell you that's probably not true. So you are never going to find a perfectly symmetrical humans. Humans by nature are asymmetrical. And you don't have to look very far to find that. Basically, your heart's up here, liver's down here. Right away, if you cut me completely in half, you're not going to find symmetries at all. And that's okay. And there's actually research that has been done, and clinicians have found that patients, or they've observed that when somebody is asymmetrical, so for instance, if their pelvis is rotated here, their thorax is rotated to the left, and their neck kind of rotated to the left, and then their head to the right, that is a pattern that is actually, they have observed to be healthy compared to someone with less asymmetries. And the reason for that is because they have found that that asymmetrical pattern has been an adaptive pattern. So as humans, and working with humans in the performance, fitness, strength and conditioning context, we are going to find asymmetries all the time. And again, that is not inherently bad at all, and it might actually be a good thing. Asymmetry is kind of how humans perform in a wide variety of contexts, and it's actually how humans kind of create some stability. So if you actually get down to the very micro level, you can find that connective tissue, your connective tissue, your fascia, kind of operates in this helical manner. So if you take a helical structure, that structure is, if you cut that structure in half, it's not going to be symmetrical. But that structure together, it's asymmetrical, and it actually provides a lot of stability for compression. So if you kind of, and that is actually, they found, that is kind of what is operating under our soft tissue, under our fascia at the very micro level. So if you kind of extrapolate that out to a little bit more of a macro level, that's how your body deals with compression and deals with stability. And if you really think about it, if we were super perfectly symmetrical humans, we would break all the time. So if you're lifting heavy weight, if you're under heavy loads, your body creates this really high compressive, high pressure, asymmetrical strategy to stay stable under the weight. Because the last thing you want to do under heavy weight is start to turn. Not only can that cause injury, but it's also just a very inefficient way to lift a lot of weight. So again, not even asymmetry is a bad thing, it's probably a good thing in most contexts. And you can even get a little crazy here, and if you look at like the fundamental nature of our universe, there's asymmetry everywhere. And then you can even look at this in the form of entropy, which is essentially chaos. And if you, everywhere you look, there is a decent amount of chaos. And if a really good podcast, Brian Greene briefly talks about this with Joe Rogan, but that chaos, that entropy kind of takes form, and there's order, there's a brief sense of order, and then it goes back to being chaotic and sort of asymmetrical. But I don't want to get too off the rails there. But again, asymmetry, not a bad thing. In most contexts, probably a good thing. It's how our body deals with stability and how our body performs at the highest levels, at high speeds. If you look at sprinters, if you look at just any athletes that are performing at the top of their field, you're going to find asymmetries everywhere. And if you put somebody in under an x-ray, you are never, ever, ever going to find a perfect spine. And I think that should tell us something about the nature of humans, and it shouldn't be the sort of fear-mongering approach where, oh shoot, my left arm's stronger than my right arm, or this left arm has less range of motion than my right arm. These asymmetries are, again, not a bad thing, and I think we need to understand that's fundamental as humans and as coaches or as just athletes that are working to perform a little bit better in whatever domain. That should be our starting point. Our starting point should be asymmetrical humans and go from there. And most of the time, we might not want to move too far away from that asymmetrical starting point, because you just kind of have to observe. Once you start moving away from that, you just kind of have to observe what happens. And I think most of the times, you're first of all just not going to be able to move away too far from that asymmetrical starting point. But in most contexts and most domains, it's probably not what we really want to seek. And again, if we might find a little bit, if we can kind of move away from that asymmetrical starting point, we might find good things at certain places in the body or whatever we're searching for. But again, if we are gaining something in one area, we're probably limiting ourselves in another area. So just real quick to finish this video off, asymmetrical humans, not a bad thing. It's sort of part of our fundamental nature, and we should not be afraid of that. That should be the starting point, and we need to, I think that needs to be kind of extrapolated in the field, and we need to have a better understanding of that and just get out of this fear-mongering, afraid approach of, oh shoot, somebody's asymmetrical, the world's going to end, because it most definitely probably won't. Boom.